Hi everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Amira, and I'm super excited to be with you today.
And I'm Khuram. In today's episode, we're diving into a super useful topic: how to train your brain to think in English. This is a game changer for anyone wanting to speak more fluently.
That's right. When you train your brain to think in English, you stop translating in your head and start using English naturally. It helps with fluency and confidence in both speaking and writing.
Exactly. So, let's get started with some tips to help you develop that skill.
Tip number 1. Label your surroundings. The first tip is to label your surroundings. You can do this by writing down the English names of everyday items around you. For example, put sticky notes on your door, window, chair, and computer.
I love that. It's a simple yet powerful way to constantly expose your brain to new vocabulary. Every time you walk into a room, your brain sees those words and makes connections with the objects.
Exactly. You don't need to label everything right away. Start with the most common objects you interact with, like your phone, table, or books. It's a great way to expand your vocabulary slowly.
You can even go beyond the basics. Try labeling kitchen items like blender, cup, or spatula. And don't forget to label things that are important to you, like your favorite hobby items.
And if you want to challenge yourself, try writing the words in both English and your native language, and then cover the native word with a sticky note. Over time, your brain will associate the English word directly with the object.
You'll see how quickly your brain starts to recognize these words without needing to think about them consciously. It's an easy but fun way to make your environment a language learning zone.
Tip number 2. Practice inner monologues in English. The second tip is to practice inner monologues in English. This means thinking in English throughout your day, like narrating your actions to yourself. For example, I'm making tea now, or I need to check my email.
That's a great one. Talking to yourself in English helps your brain get used to forming sentences and processing thoughts in the language. Start with simple tasks or thoughts you have throughout the day.
Yes. Even simple thoughts like it's a sunny day today or I'm going to the gym later are great to start with. The key is to keep it consistent and to make it part of your routine.
It also helps to talk to yourself in English while doing things like walking or waiting in line. The more you practice, the faster your brain will begin thinking in English naturally.
Over time, you can build complexity into these thoughts. For instance, instead of just saying, I'm going to make dinner, try thinking, I'm going to make spaghetti tonight with tomatoes and basil.
And it's totally okay if your sentences are short at first. The more you practice, the more fluid your thoughts will become.
Tip number 3. Use simple phrases every day. Tip number 3. Use simple phrases every day. Pick 1 or 2 useful English phrases that you can practice throughout the day. It might be something like "What's the time?" or "How are you today?"
This is a great way to build up your conversational confidence. You don't need to memorize complicated sentences, just start with phrases you would use regularly.
Yes, and try to make them part of your daily routine. For example, ask "How's the weather today?" every morning, or "What's for lunch?" when you're in the kitchen. This way, it becomes a habit.
Exactly. And after some time, you can start expanding these phrases into longer sentences. For example, "How's the weather today?" could become, "How's the weather today? Is it going to rain later?"
Repetition is key here. The more you say these phrases, the more natural they will feel. Eventually, these phrases will just pop into your head without you having to think about them.
And it's important to stay consistent. Use them every day until they're embedded in your daily vocabulary.
Tip number 4. Immerse yourself in English. Tip number 4 is immersion. To train your brain to think in English, you need to surround yourself with English content. This can be TV shows, movies, podcasts, books, anything in English.
Immersion is one of the most powerful ways to learn a language. The more you hear and see English, the more your brain gets used to processing the language naturally.
Watch TV shows or movies in English with English subtitles. This helps you connect spoken words with written words, which strengthens your understanding.
Yes. And don't just watch passively, repeat phrases and imitate the way native speakers say things. This can help you with pronunciation and rhythm.
Another great idea is to listen to podcasts, like ours, or audiobooks in English. When you hear natural conversations, you start recognizing common phrases and expressions.
Over time, your brain will start thinking in English because it's hearing and processing the language constantly.
Tip number 5. Speak out loud, even if you're alone. The next tip is to speak out loud, even when you're alone. It might feel strange at first, but it's so effective in getting your brain to think in English.
Exactly. Speaking out loud activates the parts of your brain responsible for language production. The more you practice speaking, the easier it becomes to form sentences in real time.
Try speaking to yourself about what you're doing or what you plan to do. For example, I'm cooking dinner now, I'll need the garlic and onion.
You can also practice specific phrases or dialogues. For example, pretend you're at a store and say, "How much is this?" or "I'd like to buy this, please."
Speaking out loud helps you get used to the rhythm and flow of English, and it boosts your confidence when you have real conversations with others.
The more you practice speaking, the more natural it will feel. It's one of the best ways to improve your fluency.
Tip number 6. Think in English during activities. Another great tip is to think in English during activities. Whether you're cooking, cleaning, or working, try to think about your actions in English. For example, I'm washing the dishes, or I'm organizing my desk.
This is a great way to practice thinking in English during real-life scenarios. It's low pressure and you're already doing the activity, so you just need to focus on thinking in English.
Yes. And even if you're not actively speaking, your brain is still processing English, which is fantastic practice. Over time, you'll become more comfortable using English in these situations.
Plus, it's a great way to reinforce vocabulary that's relevant to your daily life. For instance, you might start thinking about your work tasks in English, such as, "I need to reply to my emails," or "I should start that project today."
Thinking in English as you go about your day will make it feel like second nature. The key is to make it a habit. Tip number 7. Set a daily goal for thinking in English. Tip number 7. Set a daily goal for thinking in English. Start by setting aside a specific amount of time each day where you only think in English. For example, you might aim for 15 minutes a day and gradually increase it.
This is a great way to challenge yourself and track your progress. You could use a timer to remind yourself to think in English and then see how long you can go.
It's important to start small and build up over time. Maybe you begin with just 5 minutes, and then work your way up to 30 minutes or more.
Yes. And if you have trouble staying focused, you can pick one task or activity during which you'll think in English, like doing the dishes or walking to work.
Tracking your progress is a great way to stay motivated. You could even make a note of how you feel about your progress every day, which helps you see your improvement over time. Tip number 8. Use English in your hobbies and interests. The next tip is to use English in your hobbies and interests. Whether it's sports, cooking, painting, or something else, try to incorporate English into your passions.
This helps you stay engaged while learning. You won't feel like you're studying English, instead, you're using it as a tool to enhance your hobbies.
If you love reading, switch to books in English. If you're a gamer, play video games in English. You can even follow YouTube tutorials in English for your favorite hobbies.
Watching cooking videos in English or following recipe blogs will teach you new vocabulary and phrases that are directly related to your interests.
The more you incorporate English into activities you love, the more naturally it will come to you. Tip number 9. Keep a vocabulary notebook. Tip number 9. Keep a vocabulary notebook. Whenever you learn a new word, write it down along with its meaning and an example sentence.
A vocabulary notebook is a great way to actively engage with the language and reinforce new words. Plus, you can go back and review it whenever you need a reminder.
Organize your notebook by themes, like foods, travel, or work. This way, you can learn words related to specific areas that are important for you.
And don't just write down the word, try to use it in sentences and write your own examples. This helps your brain connect the word to its context.
Reviewing your vocabulary notebook regularly will also help you remember new words. Tip number 10. Surround yourself with English speakers. And last but not least, surround yourself with English speakers. Try to find conversation partners, join language exchange groups, or talk to people who are fluent in English.
This is one of the fastest ways to train your brain. When you have conversations in English, your brain is forced to process the language quickly, which accelerates learning.
You can also connect with people online through apps or social media platforms where you can chat in English.
Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Conversations are a natural part of the learning process. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become.
And remember, language exchange isn't just about talking, it's about learning from each other and growing together.
Here are some short and simple meanings of words that might help learners. Label. A small piece of paper or sticker with information on it. Surroundings. The area around you. Narrate. To explain or describe something in words. Fluency. The ability to speak or write smoothly and easily. Routine. Something you do regularly. Expand. To make something bigger or add more to it. Confidence. Belief in yourself or your abilities. Immerse. To completely involve yourself in something. Phrase. A small group of words that have a specific meaning. Habit. Something you do often, usually without thinking. Let me know if you'd like more.
Wow, we've covered a lot of tips today. To recap, start by labeling your surroundings, practicing inner monologues, and using simple phrases daily. Don't forget to immerse yourself in English and speak out loud.
Smiling face. Plus, set a daily goal for thinking in English, use it in your hobbies, keep a vocabulary notebook, and surround yourself with English speakers. All of these will train your brain to think in English over time.
Remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself, stay consistent, and most importantly, have fun.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope these tips inspire you to keep practicing and get even better at thinking in English. See you next time.